To be honest, I had no idea what to expect going into Blame. The only thing that I knew for sure about it was that it was science fiction and it had incredible artwork. And after finishing reading it, I can definitely say for certain that those things are true. But virtually anything else, this manga is so wild, in-depth, and open to interpretation, I don't know if I even have the capabilities to try to explain anything else about it, but I'm going to give you what I can and try to give an introduction into this intense, action-filled, absolutely horrific, and chaotic world that is the manga of Blame. Blame plunges us into a strange futuristic world full of pain and suffering with no mercy to its characters or even to its audience. See, most of this manga is told through its artwork and the paneling alone. Yes, there is dialogue and exposition, but it's very specific when it's thrown in and also very sparingly. So, a lot of the manga is visual, which is not a problem, but it makes the viewer really have to take in this nightmaric world that presents itself like there's no escaping it. For all of its 66 chapter run, Blame is a constant bombardment of both inescapable conflict and battle, along with panels of a lost, lonely, and inevitable feeling of the infinite, and how our main character Killy mostly navigates this all by himself, being surrounded by what you could consider a living world, yet feeling absolutely isolated. Killy is a man of few words, very stoic and all about the mission, and though he's theoretically doing something heroic, we don't really get much from him in the way of personality or even backstory. There are definitely clues and explanations given along the way, but what he is or where he comes from are all far less important than the overall objective. But putting it simply, he is searching for a human being with pure genetics. Doing so would give him and humanity as a whole a chance to take back control of the setting of where this manga takes place in. See, this manga just drops you into the story with Killy already on this mission, and you know that he is inside some kind of technological structure. What seems to be like a gigantic tower at first, maybe similar to something like the Raid traveling up to the top, but as he's traveling up, the levels and each varying area of the structure looks different and get wilder and more incomprehensible as he goes. Some have communities living in them, others seem like vast barren wastelands, and some very convoluted and technical. But you don't really get the full extent of it as the manga begins. But after a dozen or so chapters, you start to understand that this isn't just some tower or a building. This is the world that the characters are living in. This place, this endless industrial labyrinth, is just like a cage that gets bigger and more complex the more you try to navigate it. It could be as big as an entire planet, or maybe multiple planets. We have no idea. The very concept of there being an outside is something that doesn't even seem like a possibility. And not only that, but and this isn't really a spoiler because I think that you find out fairly early on, but saying it won't ruin anything for you either way, that this machine-like world where everybody lives is constantly being built on top of and expanded, meaning it is like a self-sustaining being that is constantly growing larger and larger, adding to that feeling of the endlessness and the hopelessness feeling that there is trying to take control of it. And really, as this manga gets going, it feels like it's kind of set up like a video game more than anything else. Killy is an enhanced character, and like everyone is to a degree, he's looking for pure human genetics because at this point, virtually everyone is modified in some way. Cyborgs are everywhere, what's left of humanity is falling apart. But like I said, it's very video game-like because as Killy ascends the Machine City, he battles his way towards new locations to explore, fights ever-expanding enemies with different abilities to figure out, and his weapon is this gravitational gun thing that is incredibly OP, and he uses it to blast his way from level to level, which wouldn't really be possible without it. But since the entire landscape is technological, that means that everything is basically connected, so the world itself has safeguards that are designed to protect it. These things take various forms and shapes, practically building themselves out of the environment itself, and this is where the manga showcases some of the best and most haunting monstrous designs that I have ever seen that look like they're taken right out of H.R. Giger's nightmares. Some of these things are ridiculously powerful and large and have no room for discussion to try to diffuse the situation. Similarly to Killy himself, they'll do anything to accomplish their mission, which means a lot of people die. Seriously, when the manga first began, it seemed like every single character that Killy met would be killed off by the end of the next chapter. It's not until we get to meet Sibo, I'm not sure if that's really how you pronounce her name, but she is the first consistent supporting character, and Sibo is actually a really hard character to talk about without spoilers, but essentially she was once a human scientist and now completely cybernetic, and she has various incarnations and bodies through the course of the manga, but she joins Killy on his mission at one point, and the two of them make a pretty good pair, but don't expect any sort of romantic tension or for there to be a love story. This is definitely not that kind of manga. This manga is all about deep sci-fi lore, but without blatantly explaining it to its audience. And with that, it can become very confusing, especially with the lack of dialogue in most cases. I really think that this is the kind of manga that is meant to be reread to pick up on the hints and messages that are deeply layered within it throughout its entire run, because all of the characters mostly understand everything that is happening and how this technology works, but the reader doesn't. None of the lore is given to you outright. You piece it together through the context of the story and seeing how things work over time. And this is on purpose, but because the manga is so focused on the mission, the plot, and building the lore, for me, and this is just me personally when it comes to my own sensibilities with storytelling, it is missing a human connection element that I normally gravitate towards. And what I mean is, for this story, it's very important for things to be very technical, very efficient, dealing with technology and the advancements of humanity. Humanity itself is much more robotic by nature at this point, and Killy feels very stiff because of this. Like I said, the story feels like a video game, and he feels like a great video game character, but reading him in a manga, there isn't really a whole lot to connect to, and he never really has a moment of breaking down despite losing a lot. He's also incredibly OP, especially with his weapon and his healing abilities, and so for me, there was kind of a lack of connection to him. He seemed more like a vessel to tell the plot of the story rather than a fully fleshed out character, and I think that maybe I wanted to see his layers pulled back a little bit and get more of an understanding of what makes him tick, but I also understood that this is not that kind of manga, so I'm not judging the manga on that, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Don't think that I'm bashing it or talking down on it at all. Definitely not. I really enjoyed the journey this manga took me on. All I'm saying is it didn't resonate with me as deeply as I was hoping it would because I felt a little detached from its main characters. And I haven't even gotten into the Netsphere stuff yet. So not only does the physical world of this manga have all mechanical aspects to it, but there is also a completely cyberspace-like dimension called the Netsphere, which is accessible to a few. Each time it's shown, it seems more like a spiritual realm than anything else, which is kind of fitting with the planet being as robotic as it is, then its heaven and hells would also be like a cyberspace. The full extent of the Netsphere I still don't understand, but it does have significance when it comes to controlling how this world functions. So Killy's mission of pure human genetics is meant to be a way to enter and navigate the Netsphere and bring it back to the purpose that's more helpful to humans as opposed to being dominated and subjugated by what's left of the technology that's here. Most humans here are being hunted down and killed, and so, like I said, the definition of what human is here is a little bit skewed. By pure human, it basically means because this world is so far advanced to a point where everyone, and I mean everyone, has some sort of enhancement, some sort of genetic tampering, or things about them that make them more of part of this landscape than what you would recognize as a pure-blooded human. So Killy's mission is to look for that kind of genetics, look for that pure of what we would understand as a pure human. And there's also a very subtle, even more subtle than the lore, if you can imagine, look at the way that time works. There's a very few moments in the manga where they casually mention a couple of thousands of hours have taken place, or even a moment where Killy is teleported away for an entire decade, and it's just a thing. It adds to the feeling that this world is more like a labyrinth, and not only does space itself seem meaningless, as everything is constantly being built and expanded on, but there is also no real time here. Time is an illusion and a human construct anyway, but this makes more complete sense here in this sort of setting, that you don't have an outside. There is no sunrise and sunset. There's no agriculture, no plants and animal life. So in that case, what sense does time make? There's no need for time in this endless loop of creation and destruction. But overall, Blame is an incredibly artistic and creative ride that I really enjoyed from start to finish. It's been a minute since I've read anything sci-fi or sci-fi horror for that matter, which this definitely is, and that more than definitely scratched that itch for me. If you go into it, just know that it doesn't hold the reader by the hand and it doesn't give you all the answers. You have to piece together the clues as the story goes on, and a lot of it seems to be open to interpretation. I know that this manga is pretty renowned and I've heard people talk about it, so I'm sure there's a lot of deep analysis of it out there. But as far as my overall consensus, it's that it's a dark look into a future that can be seen as a cautionary tale when we advance to the point where the definition of what is human has to be vastly redefined. And even if we create an existence where technology itself becomes our own Earth, even then at some point, that technology will begin to break down and become just as lost and aimless as any human would be, just as aimless as the imagery of this manga makes you feel wandering this endless labyrinth with Killy. And if you want to follow Killy's journey through it and have some seriously powerful battles and some tragic losses along the way, then you need to get yourself onto reading Blame as soon as possible. If you have read Blame, let me know what your interpretations of it are down in the comments below and what you feel like it represents overall. Other than that, guys, if you did enjoy this video, please give it a like and comment to help it out in the algorithm if you would, because all interaction does help the video be seen and it helps get my name out there a little bit more, so I'd really appreciate it. Thank you guys for supporting me up to this point. As always, definitely, I want you guys to know that I don't take it for granted, and I really, truly feel humbled and honored every time I wake up and you guys are still subscribed to me. So thank you very much. If you want to support the channel on that extra level, I do have a Patreon and merch store down below. Those links are there, as well as all the various social media links where you can follow me between Twitter and Instagram, see pictures of my cat, or Discord as well. Other than that, guys, thank you guys for watching. Really do appreciate it. And I'll see you all in a few hundred years where the metaverse just becomes the Netsphere.